Welcome to this Intelligence Explainer. I'm going to be your briefer today, and we're diving into a comprehensive situation report on the structural transformation of the Russia-Ukraine conflict as of May 2026. Now, if you've just been skimming the headlines lately, you might think you already know exactly where this war is heading. But the data we're going to look at today paints a vastly different and honestly fascinating picture of what's actually unfolding on the ground. Let's get right into it. Here is our agenda for today's briefing. We are going to start with the bottom line up front regarding systemic fragility, then move into the shifting tactical initiative, drone overmatch and casualties, how the war economy is being constrained, the shift to daytime strikes on infrastructure, and wrap up with the limits of Russo-Sino cooperation. Section 1. Systemic fragility. Let's start with the bottom line up front. So standard attrition models generally assume a pretty linear relationship, right? You spend resources, you gain territory. It's simple math. But complex military organizations just don't degrade gradually like that. They tend to resist external pressure right up until critical structural nodes fail, which then triggers sudden nonlinear collapses. And current intelligence assessments are indicating that the Russian frontline is degrading way faster than anticipated due to a convergence of compounding vulnerabilities. Basically, we're seeing a transition from a period of slow, grinding attrition to rapid, localized collapses. To put some hard numbers to this, senior military analyst Seth G. Jones from the Center for Strategic and International Studies highlighted a stunning reality. Since the start of the conflict, Russia has suffered nearly 1.2 million casualties. And for that extraordinary blood cost, they are advancing at an average rate of between 15 and 70 meters per day. To put that into perspective, that is slower than almost any major offensive campaign in the last century. We're talking slower than the most grinding, muddy battles of World War I. Moving to Section 2, the shifting tactical initiative. Let's look at exactly where Ukrainian forces have recently launched highly effective counterattacks. Up in Kupyansk, a city Russia has desperately tried to lock down, Russian forces have been largely expelled. It's now a highly contested gray zone where Russian troops are literally reduced to trying to infiltrate via underground gas pipelines. Moving to the Veliki Berluk sector, Ukrainian forces successfully liberated Odradine. And down in western Zaporizhia, specifically near Orikhiv, they've liberated Mala Tokmachka and Belohiria. They aren't just holding the line here, they are actively halting Russian advances and taking back key territory. When you zoom out, this builds a really clear operational picture. You have the stalling, incredibly infantry-heavy Russian spring offensive, starkly contrasting with these highly effective, localized Ukrainian counterattacks we just mapped out. Ukraine's approach is actively forcing a shift in the entire operational tempo. In fact, General Syrsky, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, recently pointed out that the sheer number of Ukrainian offensive actions has actually begun to exceed Russian ones. Section 3. Drone overmatch and casualties. A massive driver of this shift is the convergence of technology and logistics. For a long while, Russian forces were relying heavily on contraband Starlink terminals to coordinate their movements. Well, the recent cutoff of those systems absolutely devastated their tactical communications. Now, combine that comms blackout with a relentless Ukrainian FPV drone campaign that's essentially enforcing a logistics lockdown along the critical M14 and H20 highways. The result? Forward Russian units are completely isolated. According to Ukraine's Delta battlefield management software, over 19,000 Russian personnel were struck by drones in just the first 19 days of May 2026 alone. 34,000. That's the projected number of Russian casualties inflicted solely by Ukrainian drones by the end of May 2026, according to the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces. And keep in mind, that staggering figure completely excludes casualties from artillery, rear strikes, or traditional firefights. It's just drones. Senior military analyst Emil Castahelmi hit the nail on the head regarding why this is happening. Russia relies heavily on exposed infiltration tactics, basically sending small groups of infantry forward under skies that are just swarming with drones. It makes their casualty rates completely unsustainable. In fact, things have gotten so bad that the Russian recruitment rate has actually dipped below its replacement rate, and they were failing to meet their troop quotas in early 2026. Section 4. Constraining the war economy. Pivoting from the front line to the deep rear, current theater dynamics show that Ukrainian long-range strikes have systematically taken out critical Russian refineries. We're talking Tuapse, Volgograd, Yaroslavl, and even the Moscow oil refinery. In just 1 month, Ukrainian unmanned systems forces struck 17 major Russian oil facilities, forcing over half of them to halt or severely reduce operations.
So what does this actually mean? It directly constrains Russian economic output, it creates massive fuel shortages for their military logistics, and it exacerbates a fracturing domestic dual economy back home. To put a number on that economic damage, these targeted deep strikes plummeted Russian oil refinery output down to 4.69 million barrels per day in April 2026. That is the absolute lowest daily refining volume recorded since December 2009. It's gotten to the point where it's forcing the Kremlin to consider export bans on diesel and jet fuel just to keep their own military moving, which of course cuts off the very hard currency revenues they need to fund the war. It's a massive strategic dilemma.
Section 5. Daytime strikes on infrastructure.
Conversely, we need to look at how the Kremlin is adjusting its own aerial bombardment campaign. Intelligence assessments indicate a deliberate shift toward daytime drone and missile strikes. This isn't just about hitting physical targets anymore. Launching during the day is explicitly designed to maximize the psychological impact, forcing civilians into shelters during peak working hours and severely disrupting daily economic and commercial life across Ukraine. The devastating strikes we saw on the night of May 23rd and into the 24th illustrated this brutal approach perfectly. Russia launched 90 missiles and a staggering 600 drones specifically to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses. And this strike was notable because it included the very first use of an Orosnik intermediate-range ballistic missile against the capital, Kyiv. Some analysts actually assess this was a test of nuclear delivery systems using kinetic rods. The tangible result on the ground was severe damage to civilian water supplies and the destruction of humanitarian food aid. Finally, Section 6, Limits of Russo-Sino Cooperation. Let's pull back and look at the geopolitical arena. During President Putin's state visit to China in May 2026, the Kremlin was desperate for a major victory to showcase to both domestic and international audiences. Their primary goal? Securing the highly anticipated Power of Siberia-2 pipeline deal. But the actual outcome was far from it. No pipeline agreement was reached whatsoever. Instead, they walked away with only comparatively minor bilateral economic and friendship documents. Make no mistake, this failure signaled clear, strict limits to Russo-Sino strategic cooperation. For context, the Power of Siberia-2 is a proposed natural gas pipeline that is absolutely vital for Russia if they want to replace the massive European export revenues they lost after the 2022 invasion. The fact that they couldn't finalize this critical agreement brilliantly illustrates exactly how China is playing this. Beijing knows Moscow is financially strained, they know they're isolated, and China is actively using that negotiating upper hand to extract deep, painful concessions, rather than just throwing Putin a much-needed economic lifeline. So, bringing this all together, we really have to ask ourselves what these intersecting vulnerabilities mean for the future of this conflict. With Ukraine regaining the tactical initiative on the ground, Russia's war economy actively buckling under the weight of deep strikes, and China squeezing a desperate Moscow at the negotiating table, how long can the Kremlin's illusion of an inevitable victory hold up against the reality of structural decay? Will this non-linear collapse soon force a definitive strategic breaking point? That's the intelligence picture as it stands today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on these structural shifts.